every laugh, every smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste, the therapist. Let's go.
All right. Hi, beautiful people. If you have never been in here before, my name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. I have a podcast called Celeste the Therapist Podcast, and I have been coming on here on video for the last month. And the purpose is to just help people shift the way they think. I've been having guests on that are talking about the things that they're doing. So we have been learning a lot. Hi, Anita. We have been learning a lot from our guest. Today's guest had to reschedule, but I still wanted to come on and check in. And today I actually have a topic that we're going to talk about. But before we start, I would love to know where everybody's checking in from. So we're currently streaming on Facebook. We're on Periscope. And we are on YouTube. So we're streaming on 3 different platforms. And I am from Boston, and I've been podcasting since 2018. I wanted to put up a free course, Chicago. Chicago is in the house. Hey, Missy, Virginia's in the house. I wanted to put up a free thing that I built, a free wellness course. So this is a free wellness assessment course that I created. Once you sign up, you take the course. The goal is to look at all of these different areas in our lives. A lot of times when we're talking about wellness, we tend to only focus on the emotional wellness. A lot of times we're not talking about the other stuff, the intellectual, physical, social, environmental, financial, and spiritual. These are the main 8 ones that you typically see everywhere. I encourage people to make their own wellness chart. And if they feel like they wanted to add something to it, so if there's a relationship that you wanted to really focus on and make sure you're checking in on what that looks like. So if it's something like your child or your spouse and you wanted to like really check in and see what that looks like, I always encourage people to kind of do that and add that piece to the chart. So I wanted to talk about living in the moment. So as everyone is, hey Maurice, as everyone is aware of, a lot of people are, in the home and when there are so many different things happening and we don't know what's going to happen or how it's going to play out, that's a breeding ground for anxiety. And there's actually 2 books that I wanted to mention that I read. They're actually on the top 10 chart. One is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And that book really talks about how to be in the moment. It's a really powerful book. I just got the Audible, so I'm going to re-listen to it because it's a really amazing book. So The Power of Now is a really good book to think about. And also The Power of Habit. So I talk about habit because what I'm going to talk about now in regards to being in the moment requires us to kind of change some of our habits. And as we're changing our habits, sometimes we'll tell ourselves that, well, this is just the way that I am. And we don't think that it's possible to change, when the contrary is that we can change, and we are just the way that we are because of some faulty habits, but we can actually reshift that. And I had actually a brain integration specialist come on and actually talk about that, which was super dope to think about like what's happening in our brain and in that respect. So how to live in the moment, that's important. Why is it important, Celeste? If I can live in the moment, that means I'm focusing on today. I am not dwelling on the past. I'm not worried about the future. Dwelling on the past, worried about the future, you're missing out on the moments. And the moments is all we have. I can't stress that enough. I'm somebody that used to be a really big worrier, and I have to be in the moment in order for me not to allow my thoughts to wander. So being in the moment is important. So how do you live in the moment? One, you first know that you can't do this all at one time. Like when you're trying to make changes in your routine, it's going to take time, but it's going to take small increments of you adding something to it. So developing self-awareness is going to be important. So how can I develop self-awareness? Thanks. How can I develop self-awareness? Taking 3 minutes out of your day. So if you take 3 minutes, and I start with 3 minutes because I would like for you to build it up, but 3 minutes is something very small. You can take 3 minutes out of your day and just sit and notice your thoughts, right? If you could take 3 minutes out of your day, sit and notice your thoughts. I highly recommend trying to do it first thing in the morning or even in the middle of the day. I say first thing in the morning so that there's no excuse not to do it, because you can forget about doing it, right? So if somebody can type in, take 3 minutes out of your day to meditate. And when you're meditating, I want you to make sure that you are not judging yourself for your thoughts. So take 3 minutes out of your day to notice your thoughts. That's number one. Another way, how could you develop self-awareness? Noticing some sensories in your body, the sensories that you're using. So like your touch, your smell, your sight, that's important, right? So if you're brushing your teeth, noticing the toothbrush hitting your teeth, or even taking the shower. So as you're taking the shower, that's actually a form of mindfulness if you are in the moment and you're feeling the way the water is hitting your body, right? That's a way to meditate. If you're taking a shower every day, you can build that into your routine. You know what? When I take a shower, I'm going to try to be in the moment. I'm going to try to feel what that is feeling on me, right? Yes. I'm going to try to see what that feels on me. So we're going to make sure that we are noticing our thoughts, and we're going to do that by taking 3 minutes out of our day. Another thing is we're going to use some of our senses. So we can even go outside and we can, thank you, Sally. We can go outside and we can look at the sun, right? Every time I see the sun shining, I'm looking at it and I'm looking at the trees, and I'm always in awe, like, wow, that tree was once a seed. For me, it's always the little things. The little things is what gets me through. And this time more than ever, we need the little things to get us through. So that's number two. Number three, reframe and redirect your mind. When it's going out of whack about the what ifs, you got to tell yourself, nope, you got to think about the moment, right? So making sure that you are reframing your thought process when it starts to go into another area. So when it starts to say, what if this happens? What if that happens? And the reality is that what ifs could happen, but it's not happening right now. The more that you start to focus on the what ifs, what if that happens? And what if this happens? Your brain will start to get used to being in that state. Our brain can get used to being in an anxious state. And some of us prior to COVID were already in an anxious state. Like we already had some anxiety. So, with COVID happening, it's easy for our makeup to still stay in that state, but even further. So being mindful of that. Choose a mindful cue. So if you're somebody, you're saying, Celeste, this sounds all good and well, but I don't know how I can remind myself to do this. Something that you can do, you can actually get a rubber band or some kind of bracelet, put it around your wrist, and that could be your cue to remind you, practice mindfulness, right? It could be a screensaver on your phone. You can type in mindfulness or even Google a mindfulness picture and save that picture on your phone. And you can save that as your screen that you're seeing, especially because we're always having our phones. We can put a little sticky note on our mirror in the bathroom, right? So every time we're going into the bathroom, we can remind ourselves, oh, let me practice mindfulness. So those are some ways that you can try to create some cues so that when you are going on about your day, you can implement it into your life little by little, right? That's important. The last thing about And the last thing about how can I work on being in the moment, practicing gratitude. And I know that practicing gratitude is something that can be challenging now, when there's so much negativity taking place, right? And so it's not to negate the negativity that's happened, right? Because that's the reality. But there's something powerful about being able to be thankful for the little things that are happening. And if you've never been somebody that have tried this or have heard it this way, it could be hard to hear when you're struggling. Like, I give you that. Like, if I'm struggling, I don't want to hear you tell me I need to be grateful for something, right? I just, like, it's not something that I'm trying to hear right now. So I understand that. And when you start to struggle with the part about practicing gratitude, I want you to ask yourself if, like, what you're doing now is working for you, especially if you're finding yourself anxious, especially if you're finding yourself overwhelmed and not able to be present. If that's not working, then try to give it a try, right? And so it could be something just as, like, I'm grateful that I can see today. I'm grateful that I can that I have food to eat today, right? I'm grateful that I can walk, right? There's a lot of different things that our brain will try to assimilate to and to hold on to. And so if we allow it to go there, it will stay there. And when it stays there, it's kind of hard to get yourself out of that mindset. So being able to practice gratitude is going to be huge, and really understanding that this is a process. It's a process. It's absolutely, Liz says absolutely is hard. It doesn't mean it's not hard. It's just like crying and being upset. Yes. And then grounding oneself with, I'm thankful for this meal, or I'm thankful I woke up for this job, etc. Absolutely. Yes, that's exactly what it's like. And the thing about the emotions that we're feeling, it's going to be important not to try to distract yourself from those emotions. Leaning into those emotions is going to be important. And the reason why I say that is because the more that you try to mask the stuff you don't want to feel, the more it's just sitting there waiting, right? It's waiting. It's going to wait and interrupt your sleep. It's going to wait for you when you wake up, right? You could be trying to keep yourself so busy so you don't have to feel those hard feelings. And then you try to go to sleep, you find yourself struggling with going to sleep. Or you try to go to sleep and you're finding yourself struggling with all of these, like, dreams because you're so overwhelmed. So the way that anxiety works is that it's going to show itself in different forms. It may not be your, like, textbook term, the textbook or video movie you see about anxiety, right? It may not be that. Thank you. It may not be that. Like, it's gonna come up, but it's gonna come up in different ways. So in order to make sure that you are working on having control over your emotional wellness, and when I say control over your emotional wellness, I don't mean that you can stop the hard feelings from happening. But what I do mean is that you can work on not allowing those hard feelings to make you, like, be impulsive in your decision making, right? And so that's going to be important. Someone says also, speak in the moment. If someone gets upset with your words, they weren't your friend anyway. If you don't speak in the moment, don't worry about what you should have said next time you see the person. Yes, that's true. Choosing how we respond. Yes. So that's important. Does anybody have any questions about anything that we talked about? If you just came in, hi, my name is Celeste. We're streaming on Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube. And the goal today was to kind of talk about how to live in the moment. The reason why I wanted to talk about living in the moment is because I know so many of us are not, right? And I know, like, anxiety is really high right now because there are so many scenarios that are playing in your head. And so in order for you to try to gain that control back, right? Because right now, like, when you're not in the moment, you don't feel like you have control. Not feeling like you have control is not a good feeling. And so many people live their life without feeling like they're in control. And like every time I I think about that, like that really like breaks my heart that people think that that's just the way it has to be, because they don't know any other way, right? And I started coming on here because I realized how uneducated people were about mental health, and how people didn't understand how to take control and how to take their power back. And so that's why I kind of started doing the things that I'm doing on here. I started showing gratitude several weeks ago. It is amazing how my mind, thank you, Margaret. Yes, it's so amazing how your mindset can change once you do that. And so if you're a little skeptic about it, definitely like try to like start little by little. I would say, like, you know, people in third world countries, they really be smiling walking down the streets. And, you know, we have a lot more than they have. And it's because of the way that, you know, the little things that they are grateful for. And that's just the way that they've always lived their life. Like people like that practice Buddhism, like this is the way that they grew up. They're mindful like on a regular basis, not because they live in that part of the world, but just because that's the way that they were taught. And so many of us have not been taught that way. And just because no one's taught us how to be mindful or how to live in the moment or how to be, doesn't mean that we can't learn this, right? I always tell people, like, it's not your fault what had happened. Like, none of it is your fault, but it's your responsibility to like have the peace that you desire. Like, if you want to have peace, then you have to put in some work. Like, it's just not going to be handed to you. The peace that I experience on a regular basis is not because this is the way I was brought up. I wasn't brought up this way, but it's because of the things that I'm doing in my life on a daily basis. And so when you start to create that environment, right, the little things that we just talked about, really small increments, like starting off small. I literally started off small. When you can start starting off small, you'll start to embody that, right? Like it'll start, like your mind and your body will have no other choice but to fall in line with the way that you're trying to create the environment. So that's going to be important. It's so funny how I can have gratitude in big blind spots as well. Not funny, but interesting. Yes. It's true. It's true. So really quick, there's this free wellness assessment course that you can get and do right now. Like go to CelesteTherapist.com. You can find that free wellness course. And the reason why I created this course is because a lot of times we're struggling and we feel like so much is going wrong, right? And the reality is that so much can be going wrong. But instead of us just looking at everything that's going wrong and not doing anything about it, like having this chart with the different areas of our lives, we can actually break down the areas that we're struggling in and come up with a plan. Like, how am I going to deal with this part? Because I know in my spiritual wellness, I'm not rating so high, right? When I say spiritual wellness, are you walking in alignment with your goals and your beliefs, right? So there are so many different things that we struggle with. And if you just stay struggling and you don't do nothing about it, you're always going to feel that way. But if you can work on breaking down you can actually work on a plan so that you can be better in those areas. So if you go to CelesteTherapist.com, I actually break down each area and talk about ways that you can utilize this chart and create. You can even create your own chart. And you know how like here it says like social, like you can even break it up. And if there's like a relationship you want to work on, you can add that to the chart. So like you can create your own chart, but this is a really, really good starting point. Y'all know, if anybody you guys have been following me for a while, you know how much I believe in like looking at the power that you have within. And like, it's not like healing is not a linear process. It's not like, let me just go to my therapist and psychiatrist and I'm going to be fine, right? I'm a therapist and I truly believe like taking a holistic approach to like the things that we're struggling in. I truly believe in looking at the power that we have within to start working on the areas that we're struggling in. Two of the most powerful words in the world is thank you. Yes. Can you please elaborate a little bit about the stigma that's placed on mental health? Some people grew up seeing it as taboo subject because others may think the person needing the support is crazy. I think when it comes to the stigma, I think the media has a lot to do with the way that people look at mental health. A lot of times, I mean, now lately it's looked a little different, but I know a lot of times when somebody is going to try to go to court or commit a crime, they talk about the diagnosis, if they had schizophrenia or bipolar, right? Some of the major stuff that people may have. But if somebody had diabetes and they was at court for committing a crime, they wouldn't say this diabetic person committed this crime. They wouldn't say this high blood pressure person committed this crime. Even in the papers, right, it'll say that in the newspaper. So a lot of times we've associated something negative that's happened with mental health. So I think that understanding, and we could talk about stigma when it comes to mental health, or how media displays other aspects of our lives, right? So we can go into different directions. And so mental health is just as important as our physical health. I can never understand how we got to a point of making it so separate and making it so stigmatized, when like our brain and the things that we're thinking and doing and the trauma and the pain that we hold within ourselves literally starts to manifest and it turns on us. Like, it literally will turn on you. It really will start to show up in your test results. There's a lot of unexplained medical issues that people have, and a lot of it is related to the pockets of trauma and pain that we hold. But nobody's going to talk about that because the pharmaceutical companies don't get paid for that, right? A lot of us are holding on to so much pain. A lot of emotional freedom has to take place. And I think it starts, with us, with the individual recognizing that. And the more we recognize that, and the more we start to heal. So I think, when it comes to the stigma, I'll tell you this quick story. When I was working in the emergency room, and this is why I decided to start coming on social media about 5 or 6 years ago. So I used to come on social media before my podcast and talk about mental health. And it was because I remember going into the emergency room. I was seeing clients who was dealing with some kind of psychiatric emergency. And the person I was talking to was having a lot of symptoms of anxiety. And he was confused because he had been using substances for 15 years. And he was like, I'm clean and sober. Like, why is this happening? And I said, you probably was dealing with these symptoms prior to you, like using excessively, and you started drinking. And so the drinking helped alleviate the anxiety. And so now you have a drinking problem, and now you have other problems, but you started drinking because you can't say like, you don't have language to talk about like, oh, like I'm feeling nervous, or I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that because of X, Y, and Z. Like, you can't even make the connection, but you do know, like, when you took that hit or when you took that drink, you start to feel real good. You start to be a little bit more relaxed. Drinking is not stigmatized. Going to the bar, going partying is not stigmatized. But if I say I'm about to go see my therapist, people be like, what's wrong with you? Why are you going to see a therapist? But I can go party, and I can go drink, and I can go to the liquor store. Ain't nobody going to say what's wrong with me. They're not going to say that. And so like when I explained that to him, it was like this like sense of relief came on him because he had language and he understood what was happening. And so like the biggest thing that you can do for yourself is start to tap into how you're feeling, because how you're feeling is why you are doing or not doing some of the things that you choose to do or not do. And then if I can tap into what I feel, I'm not going to allow my feelings to control what I do. Right. And that's the part that a lot of us don't understand. We try to make these changes. We come up with these resolutions. We say we're not going to do X, Y, and Z. Like logically, we know, like, I don't want to do that anymore. But then somehow we find ourselves making these impulsive decisions, and we keep going on this roller coaster ride. And we're not like understanding why it's happening. And it's happening because we are not in control, or we're not mindful of like what it is that we're feeling and what we're thinking. So if I understand my trigger, I understand when I feel this way, it makes me want to do X, Y, and Z. I'm going to be mindful of that. So that's important. I hope this was helpful. Y'all know how much I love talking about mental health. It's like I sleep, breathe, think about mental health, because the moment I started to understand how powerful it was for me to tap into my like emotional wellness, and the moment I started to understand like, oh, okay, I got to do X, Y, and Z, right? Like the moment I started to do that, things started to look so different for me. So I would be like, I got to tell the people. So when I come on, I'm always excited, because I can't tell you how many messages I get from people who have started therapy, or have started working on themselves, or started to have language, or started to make connections. Like, that's so exciting to me. I get so excited when people are making connections, because the connections that you start to make in your life are not something that you can see. It's not tangible, right? You can't see that. But the mindset that starts to change. Thank you. I'm so grateful that, yeah, thank you. You can't see what's happening, right? You cannot see the things that are happening, especially if you never made space to process, right? But the moment you start to think and start processing, you start to realize like, oh, okay. Then you don't start to beat yourself up for some of the struggles that you have, because you're human and you're having some of the struggles as a response to what had happened. So that's why, like, I do the work that I do. That's why I'm so passionate about what I do. So we'll be back tomorrow. Special guest tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. I'm excited that I got to do this because I really, really enjoy like doing this. Don't forget, like, you can catch my podcast. I am streaming on all podcasting platforms, and there are over 100 episodes that you can listen to. Podcasts are a great way to really work on like shifting your mindset. I just happen to talk about like shifting the way you think. That's like my biggest thing that I do. But there's so many different podcasts that you can do. So start your day with intent, right? Really quick recap, start your day with intent. Work on creating some kind of cues to remind yourself to be mindful. That can be a little bracelet around your hand. It could be like something on your mirror. It could be an alarm on your phone that you set. Ways that you can start to be mindful, and you're incorporating it into your routine. When you take a shower, just feeling the water come on you. When you're brushing your teeth, just feeling the toothbrush on your teeth. Just going outside, looking at the sun, just seeing the sun, or if you have any trees or flowers in your area, like go outside and just look at the trees, and then also like practicing gratitude. That's going to be important. Practicing gratitude is such a powerful thing to do. I promise you it is. So I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Don't forget, if anything I ever say resonates for you, understand, hey Gerard, understand that you guys have the power to make the change. But in order for it to happen, you have to start to have faith to believe in yourself. When you start to have faith to believe in yourself, like nobody can take that away from you. That's like the most powerful thing you can do, is start believing in you, because that's an internal thing, right? Anytime that someone says, well, this person made me do that, or they made me say this. And I always say, like, how could they make you do something when that's an internal thing that you're doing? You're allowing them to. Even if somebody cuts me off, I'm driving, and if I find myself getting like boiled up, and I get mad at myself immediately, that's how quick I am. Immediately, I'm like, Celeste, why you let that person make you feel that way? I never say like, you made me do this. I say, I allowed it. And having that language will allow you to start to look at the power you have. If it's always this person is doing this to me and that person's doing that to me, and I can't live because of this and because of that, you're going to always feel like you don't have any power to make any changes. But if you start to shift your thinking and change your language and looking at how you've allowed them to control the narrative, you'll start to see things a little bit differently. So I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Every laugh, every smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste, the therapist. Let's go.